Everybody take a deep breath.
Hi, everyone. We see you all trickling in. Thanks for joining us. We'll get started in just a few moments. Thanks so much for being on our webinar tonight.
Can't hear you.
I'm on mute. So thank you all for joining us tonight. As you know, Emancipation Park Conservancy is celebrating their 148th annual Juneteenth celebration. And this year we're celebrating virtually. Our virtual campaign is called We Are Juneteenth. Tonight, our webinar will focus on the Founders Corners. If anyone has been by the park recently or driven by at any point this year, they will see that there have been 4 monuments that are beautiful, beautiful mosaic monuments that have been installed in the park. And tonight we're going to be talking about how history meets art inside of Emancipation Park. For those that aren't familiar, I will first start with a bit of history about Emancipation Park. Emancipation Park was founded in 1872 by 4 formerly enslaved men, which you'll learn lots more about tonight. And they pulled together in an act of cooperative economics $800 so that they could purchase 10 acres of land. And the land was purchased for the purpose of being able to celebrate Juneteenth. Fast forward to 2020, and now we have Emancipation Park Conservancy. We are a team of 5 wonderful ladies who manage the programming and partnerships and fundraising for the park. So without further ado, I'll get started with our program and introduce you to our moderator and our panelists and our staff that will be joining us tonight. First, we have Dr. Alvia Wardlaw. Dr. Alvia Wardlaw is the curator and director for the University Museum at Texas Southern University, and tonight she is our expert. We call her the expert because Dr. Wardlaw is one of the country's top experts on African American art. She's been very, very central to the development of art by African Americans in Houston, and she's also a professor of art history at Texas Southern University. Another amazing thing about Dr. Wardlaw is that she is a Houston and a 3rd Ward native. She's also a graduate of Jack Yates High School. Next, joining us tonight, we'll have Deborah Blacklock-Sloan. She is the historical researcher and genealogist for Ebony Ancestry. She is our historian. So she is a professional genealogist. She's an historical researcher. She has over 25 years of experience, and she's also a native Houstonian. She's very passionate about helping African Americans find their ancestor, and she specializes in researching historic structures, churches, cemeteries, communities, and organizations. So Deborah Blacklock-Sloan was our historian on this Founders Corners project. Thank you so much, Deborah, for joining us tonight. Next, we have Reginald Adams. Reginald Adams is the founder and CEO of Reginald C. Adams, LLC, and he is the artist for this project. He's a public artist, a social entrepreneur, and a community developer. He is world-renowned for his award-winning tile mosaic, murals, sculptures, and art installations, which are strategically located in historic and underserved communities across the United States. What makes his work most unique is the process of engaging the public in the design, creation, and celebration of the work. So Reginald tonight will be sharing the art, the creative process, and how he engaged the communities. So at this time, and apologies, I did not announce myself. I'm Yvonne Garrett Price. I'm the Manager of Programs and Strategic Partnerships at Emancipation Park Conservancy. Also joining me tonight, you might not see her face, but you will hear her voice, is Kanetta Moore. She is the Special Events and Marketing Manager for Emancipation Park Conservancy, and she will be chiming in towards the end during our Q&A. And at this time, I will go ahead and pass it over to Dr. Alvia Wardlaw. She's going to be sharing a little bit about the recent park renovations and also Phil Freelon's architectural vision and how the Four Corners project came about, because she has been involved from the very beginning.
Thank you, Iman, and thank you for organizing what I think is going to be a wonderful discussion. I'm very happy to be a part of this and really looking forward to hear from both Reginald and Deborah. And just to set the stage, as you mentioned, Emancipation Park is such an incredible space in the city of Houston. We have had this park since 1872, and the forethought and the vision of the founders of this park still inspire us. And I think, you know, their vision was to not only have a park that would bring people together for picnics and church functions. I remember as a child going down Emancipation, which was then Dowling, and hearing revivals there in the park. It was always a part of the community. So when Phil Freelon, the architect, was commissioned to restore and renovate the park, I think it was impressive that he did his homework. He really dug into the history of Houston, of Black Houston, of the park, and he listened. He had visioning sessions there in the community center where he heard that, you know, families wanted spaces for their children to play. They wanted a baseball park. They wanted a place where they could enjoy outdoor entertainment. They wanted to see that community center come to life. They wanted a place where they could exercise. And he and his team really worked to provide all of that. And in addition, it was very important that there were symbolic elements included in the design. And as the design emerged and Phil Freelon met several times again with the Conservancy, with members of the Friends of Emancipation Park, and gathered all of this information. You could see it evolving. So the Four Corners initially were four very abstract, iconic compositions, three-dimensional on each of the corner. And it was the task and responsibility for our historian and artists to transform these works into meaningful monuments that even further reflected the history of the park. But the last thing I want to say about the evolution of Emancipation Park in this recent, I don't want to call it a renovation. It's like an emergence, you know, an emergence into the 21st century. At the same time that Phil Freelon was designing with his team the new Emancipation Park, he was also, as we all know, designing the National Museum of African American History and Culture. And those two experiences merged because I think the architect understood that, you know, the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture is like the mothership in Washington, D.C. It's become a place of pilgrimage. There are scenes, presentations on Dr. Freeman, on Freedmanstown, photographs by Early Hutnall that are included, and Kermit Oliver are all included at the National Museum in terms of Houston's history. So for Phil Freelon, it always impressed me that he was just as serious about elevating the history of Emancipation Park as he was for completing the magnificent National Museum of African American History and Culture, because he saw the two being connected. And I think that's part of his legacy. And I think now that we see those two arches that he designed in the back a couple of weeks ago when young people were gathering at the park, organizing themselves for the marches in Houston, it added another element of history to what we have always been doing, because those original founders, as I said, they went there not only to celebrate, but to organize. And I know that Deborah will have more to say about that, but I'm looking forward to hearing both of our speakers who have transformed the park yet again in such a wonderful way. So Deborah, if you could share with us your thoughts and how you came to organize all of this incredible information about the park.
Thank you, Dr. Warlaw. First, I'd like to publicly say that it was a pleasure to work on the project. As a native Houstonian and a sixth-generation Texan, I am always honored to work on local history. My job was to find the history of those gentlemen that Dr. Warlaw and Yvonne talked about. So my process is finding their footprint through historical documents. And that would include census records, Freedmen's Bureau records, marriage records, tax records. One valuable record would be the 1867 Texas voter registration, which will Yvonne will show you in a minute. The newspapers, because the park celebrations were published in the white newspapers as well. Other thing is looking at these footprints helped me to determine how these Black persons forged in a world of institutionalized racism, and they still managed to buy property, to make an impact upon the Black community, also gained the influence of those white residents who probably who were sometimes benefactors of any efforts they were trying to do. And the main thing that I want to stress is that these achievements just were documented from enslavement to emancipation. All of these gentlemen were enslaved. I've got records of when on the Texas voter registration, how long they'd been in Texas. So the fact that they were emancipated and managed to come together collectively with other citizens of Houston, of the churches, and pull the resources and buy this parkland is extraordinary. Their influence in the city and state and county can be seen in the documents that I found in religious, education, cultural, social, and educational institutions as well. And again, I'm just proud to work on this project. I've learned so much about it. I grew up in the Fifth Ward, and honestly, I had never been to Emancipation Park as a child. But I will say that it has been a pleasure to just walk around the park. The art is the building is expiring. The colors remind me of Africa, you know, that Mr. Freelon used, and I'm just again really impressed and honored to have been part of this project.
So you have some images,
Yes, Yvonne
Deborah,
has
that you want.
some images she's going to show you, and I'm just going to, I only picked about 3, and I'm going to talk
Mhm.
about those, Yvonne. So whatever you show first, I will elaborate on it. Okay, so one of the documents that I used, this is in 1870, Houston City Directory, and Richard Brock is mentioned in this document, and this is from 1870, and this is a very, very valuable document because it tells you where where they lived, what their occupation was, and again, this is very relevant because this would have been the first time that votes would have been mentioned in the census. So Richard Brock is mentioned in this document as well.
Wow.
Next document, Iman. So this is a newspaper article on Richard Allen, who was very influential. He was a politician. He was a bridge builder. He built the Mayor Morris's home, and so he was very influential in Houston. So this is a obituary of Richard Allen, and talking about him serving in the 12th and 13th legislatures. And Mr. Allen did a lot for the public schools. He was very big on education. He was a influential member at his church as well, and a constant participant in the Juneteenth celebrations. Sometimes they served as grand masters of the celebration. But again, this is from the Houston Post newspaper, which was at the time would have been a white publication. But Richard Allen had been so influential that they published his obit in the paper. Next document. This is a census on Reverend Elias Dibble, the minister at Trinity United Methodist Church, one of the first Black Methodist churches in Houston. Again, Reverend Dibble was also enslaved, made an impact on the community as well. The census record gives you a lot of information. As you can see, his birth year is estimated at 1835. He's a carpenter, and it'll list everyone in the household, and it also tells you where he was from. So this was another valuable document that I used in coming up with language for the text for the panels. Next document. Now, this is another important document. When Blacks were enslaved, they were not allowed to marry, but if they had children together, the slaveholders would recognize that as a marriage. This particular document is a document for Reverend Jack Yates. And so what Black folks would do once they got emancipated, one of the first things they did was got married. And this was a way to exercise their freedom as citizens. And this is Reverend Yates' first wife, and this is from 1869, and another very valuable document. I've seen several of these in the archives, and again, it's something that I use in my research as well. And again, it's really important because it shows how Blacks felt like they needed to become citizens in Houston by marrying each other. Also, the Texas voter registration list, which I talked about, 1867 and 1870. People, let me tell you, people were registering to vote. And Richard Brock, this is one for Richard Brock, dated 1867. This document would tell you how long they've been in the county, how long they've been in the state, how long they've been in the city. And this was accurate. According to Richard Brock, I'd read many things about him, how he was enslaved when he came to Texas. And this document just verifies the information he had been telling when he first came to Texas. Second document, again, is another Houston, Texas City Directory, 1892 from 1895, from Reverend Jack Yates. And he was in the directory so many times as a colored pastor and a colored teacher. And as you can see, it lists the business name, which would have been Antioch Missionary Baptist Church, where he was passing at. And then it also gives the address of the church as well. So again, the voter registration, city directories, marriage records, census, all of these things came into play when I came up with the text for all 4 panels. And again, it was such an honor to be part of this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. That's just absolutely fascinating, because when we were working on this, we didn't see all of those documents. And I think what you do is take us back in time immediately with the documents. I was looking at Elias Dibble and saw that he was born in Georgia, which is actually where I was born, but came to Houston when I was 4. And now I'm wondering, how did he get from Georgia to Texas? You know, these documents open up so many questions. So, and then the voter registration document, I mean, that's inspiring as we are trying to get everyone out to vote. You know, I think that document alone could be used, you know, as a source of inspiration. But I have to ask you before we turn to Reginald, just for everyone's general information, where do you start? I mean, you got this project, but how did you start? What is your advice to people when you're digging like that for information? Where do you go first?
Well, I have Ancestry.com. And so I start with the census records. And so from there, you could go to the archives to look up any deed records where they purchased property. And there was certainly lots of records on these gentlemen purchasing property. So the archives, you can go there. The Houston Metropolitan Research Center, which I call the Texas Room, they've got newspapers there as well. And so, but those are the 3 major places where I go if I'm not online researching on Ancestry.com or Family.com as well. The Houston City Directories, they are online as well. I think they stop at 1942. They begin in 1866 and go up to 1842 online. But after that, you can go to Clayton Genealogical Library and look at those books. They have the actual books. And so you could look at city directories there as well.
And these are available for anyone who wants to do research?
Yes, they are. Yeah, right.
That's wonderful. And then my last question is, you know, and Reginald is going to be talking about this, but in terms of distilling all of that information down to the text on the monument, how did you approach that? Because that was a real challenge. You have all of this rich information, but only a certain word count, you know?
Yeah, well, yeah, that is, well, I would say it has to do with being on the historical commission for at least 20 years when we do the text for the markers. What we try to do with so much information is pull out the most relevant information, so that when people are reading the text, it will encourage them to go and look further and say, hey, I think I want to know more about this story. So just pull out the most pertinent facts as you can, and it is a hard process. So I hope everybody's pleased with that text. I hope so.
I think you did an amazing job. Thank you so much, Deborah. And now, Reginald, we want to hear how you translated these monuments, which, as I said in the beginning, were very abstract, very simple. You retained the integrity of the form, but how did you really interpret the spirit of these 4 founders in the visual presentation?
So first of all, I'd want to thank the Emancipation Park Conservancy and the OST Management District for the opportunity. And of course, Amon, thank you for organizing the panel. This was one of our most unusual public art projects, primarily because one, the canvas pre-existed, which are these monuments, but they weren't, you know, round columns, which we're often very used to covering with tile. They weren't square, they weren't rectangular. In fact, I can't even find the right word for the geometric shape that they're called. I think they were a series of rhombuses and trapezoids constructed to create a really unique shape. But what was unusual about the monuments is that they were hidden in plain sight. As I described to people, oh yeah, there's 4 monuments on the corner. This was even before we got started with the artwork. No one knew what I was talking about. and yet they had stood there since the park had been renovated. They had been really just kind of sitting in plain sight, and because they were so plain, for lack of better words, they were almost invisible. And so it was a great challenge for us to bring those shapes to life, not only with the color and the designs that we created, but also utilizing Deborah's expertise and that historical knowledge and that historical data to turn them into a learning lesson for anybody who had an opportunity to see it. And thanks in part to the amazing design team, there's some other folks that are not on this panel, Fanon and Bill Cochran. It was the collective collaboration, much like those four founders 148 years ago. They came together with a vision. We were able to build on that vision to create artwork that now serves the park and serves the community at large, not only to beautify the space, but also to serve as an educational tool so that people really understand where our thinking was 148 years ago, to understand the importance of bringing our resources together so that our families and communities could have a safe place to come and convene, celebrate, and enjoy our freedom at that time. And here we are now, almost 150 years later, really still kind of fighting for those same freedoms. And so it's been an honor to be an artist tied into this particular project.
Well, I think you've done an incredible collaboration, and I want to congratulate you.
Thank you.
And before you walk us through the process, I just wanted to say in transforming the monuments, which were, they're geometric and I think very simple, and you're right in saying that, they were just unadorned. I think that it was the light factor in them that Phil Freelon was focusing on, but there was nothing that pulled one's eye to those monuments. The focus was on the architecture, the building. So in your interpreting them anew, I think you did two things, because people now, when they drive down Emancipation or Elgin or the other two streets, that color immediately beckons, the viewer. And then, so you're pulled in because of that. And then, as Deborah said, the words and the narrative that accompany it, that you can only see as you approach it, you both so beautifully placed on there. And I too would like to thank Bill Cochran and Fanon Finley Smiley for the work that they did. You all were and are an incredible team. And I think what you said about echoing the team, the original four founders is very well said. So do you want to walk us through?
Sure. And I'll set the context in describing the process, and then I'll show some images so people can, let the pictures speak for themselves. But for the most part, our approach in community-based public art is one, really just listening to the community. So before one piece of tile was laid, we sat through a series of stakeholder meetings with the folks from the Emancipation Park Conservancy, from the OST Management District, from the community at large, to really hear what was important thematically, what was important from a historical context, and we allowed that information to inform our design process. And the next step is essentially to engage the public. We hosted several what we called community outreach days, where kids from the local neighborhood, I believe it was Baylor College of Medicine at Ryan Middle School, actually came into the studio to help us produce the work. We held a day where community stakeholders could come in and do the same thing. And the premise behind that approach is so that the community itself takes ownership in the actual production of the work. And what we found over the course of 2 decades of taking this kind of approach is that the community will then protect the work and they'll become the stewards of it. So I'm gonna share my screen and show a few photographs of just that. Let me see. Okay, here we go. So can you all see that?
Yes.
Yep. Okay. So this is some community folks. In fact, you all may be familiar. This is Annetta Burney and Sylvia Brooks and another community stakeholder actually laying some tile inside the studio. And, you know, this of course is not their forte, so it's a very unique experience. I'm going to transition over to what the actual pieces look like before we touch them, just so that people can get a sense of these columns prior to, oops, I can't see the labels on these, so you have to excuse it. But I'll just move through the design. So here you have, this is the monument honoring Richard Allen. This also, so from a design standpoint, I'll back up. We viewed the four founders as catalyst of change. And the title of the working title for our work was called Elements of Change. And so each of the four founders was identified or associated with one of the four elements of the universe, be that fire, water, wind, and earth. And so each design speaks to one of those elements, and the idea is that these four men essentially were elements of change within their own community. And so Reverend Yates is identified with fire. You'll see the color palette that relates to that. Reverend Elias Dibble is associated with the water, and so his monument is by the pool. Richard Brock is associated with earth, and so you'll see the color palette connected to that. And then you have, I believe, Richard Allen, which was associated with wind. I'm going to kind of go back and forth because I can't see the labels on these photographs, but this is one of the community stakeholders, I believe a board member from OST, Janetta Scott, that is laying some tile. She'll be able to come back to this forevermore and point out to the pieces that she played a part in it. This is our artist team and Theola Pettaway, who's the executive director of the OST Management District, in the studio actually laying tile. It's a very unique experience for somebody to be able to work outside their comfort zone, to be a part of a project like this. This is actually one of the monuments. This is Richard Brock and the column representing Earth. This is at the Hutchins and Tuam corner of the park. We have the close-up of the back of the design. I practice a discipline called sacred geometry, which I'd like to thank Dr. John Biggers for introducing me to this mathematical.
Reginald?
Yes.
One moment, we're still seeing the first photo that you put up on the screen. We're not seeing the rest of the photos that you're seeing.
Oh, really? Okay,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm just talking. Okay, how about this? Screen sharing has stopped as the shared window is closed. Okay. All right, let's try this again.
But I did see my next door neighbor, Sid Nepal, on the first. I have to tell her.
Do you see that?
Okay. Yes.
Okay. And do you see that? This is one of the monuments without anything on it.
Mm-mm.
We see the monument with someone on it, but we don't see the monument without.
Interesting. Okay, I'm not sure what's happening, but what I'm going to do is just go to a video, and that video will. Can you see the video now?
No.
We're not seeing the video. You might have to stop your screen share and start it again with the video.
Okay, I'm sorry. Oh, wow. Stop share your screen.
Rock.
Paused. Resume share. Okay. I apologize.
That's okay. It's a beautiful.
Okay. Here we go. Goodness, Reginald. You see a video?
Not yet.
No?
No.
Oh, goodness. Yes?
There's something coming on the screen.
Please
We're
tell me.
seeing the photos of the Baylor College of Medicine
But you don't see a video playing?
No, we don't see the video
No, but
playing just yet.
Oh, goodness. Okay.
this is beautiful.
Do
Yeah,
you want to just a little bit talk through the time that you spent with these particular students and their community engagement?
I'd like for you to see what I'm seeing, but I will do that for the sake of time. So the idea for this approach is essentially to give young people an opportunity to be a part of their own neighborhood, to be a part of the redevelopment of their own community. And so the students came in for a morning session where they were then enabled to come and work with our artists to actually, let's see, here we go. You see a video now. Yes, please. Yeah? Yes?
We see a video, yes.
Oh, good. All right. So I'm trying to get the most out of this drone, promise me. So really the idea just in the community engagement in general is so that when I live in the neighborhood, I live literally blocks away from Emancipation Park. So I'm fortunate I can come there essentially every day if I chose to, which oftentimes I would, to come and play. I have a 3-year-old son, we'd come and play on the playground. But we thought, for someone who either lives, works, or plays in the neighborhood, what better experience for them to not just come and visually see the work, but also have a chance to take ownership because they helped create it. And whether you lay 1,000 tiles or 1 tile, there's a really deep sense of stewardship that comes along with knowing that you helped make something happen. And so that's really the element that we try to bring into these projects by enabling the community to play a meaningful part in the co-creation of them. And so instead of me wasting a lot of time with the images, perhaps if there's other questions that Dr. Wardlaw has or comments that I can refer to while I pull up some additional imagery. Hello?
Dr. Wardlaw, you're on mute.
Sorry, I just put myself on. I'm just impressed, Reginald, by the way in which you utilize your team to engage artists, of all ages, and those who don't consider themselves artists, but just they come to help. And can you speak to how this experience, especially among young people, introduces them to the arts and to history?
Sure. A lot of times, I think in public schools now, art is like the bow-legged, freckled stepchild, and it's the first resource to be cut budget-wise, and oftentimes with the resources as far as instruction. So we see these public art experiences as a way to re-engage young people in the creative process, but do so in a meaningful way where beyond their work of art being hung on a bulletin board or at home on the refrigerator, they get to see their creativity on full display in the public.
Right.
And the sense of pride that comes from that is immeasurable. When a young person who may grow up in a less affluent neighborhood where there may be blighted, vacant lots and abandoned space and overgrown fields, to actually be able to see their own work contribute to the beautification of their neighborhood is something they'll take with them for the rest of their lives.
Right.
And so we really try to bring those elements together where those young people have a chance to see and feel understand what it feels like to be a community builder using the arts.
Well, I think you've done that very well. And these are monuments, you know, and just in looking at them now, you can see the extreme geometry that was in the original design, and the way in which you've incorporated all of these portraits and the patterns. And Deborah, you've merged the narrative as well. It's really, it's breathtaking. And I think it adds so much to the history. You've enhanced these one-of-a-kind forms in extraordinary ways. And I think that when we started talking about this, you know, we had some ideas, and as you said, you met, you know, with everyone on the team and members of the community as well. And can you talk about your team, Reginald, of artists that you used? That I know they came to a couple of the meetings with you.
Yes. So I am fortunate to get to work with some superheroes. Yes, I call them superheroes because these are some of the most amazing humans that I've ever had a chance to work alongside. I'm lucky in that, you know, I'm the face of the work, but they are really the hands, the minds, and the brains behind much of what you see coming out of my studio, and I'm grateful to them. I'd like to acknowledge them by name. Josh Bennett, he's been working with me for now almost 15 years. Kadavian Baylor, he's a relatively new artist to Houston from Shreveport, Louisiana. And he's been very instrumental in helping with some of the design, the graphic design components of our work. Ivan Lozano is another graphic designer, but also visual artist that played a really instrumental part in bringing these mosaics to life. I have an artist by the name of Samson Bimbo Adenugba from West Africa. He's a master painter, and he has an incredible eye for design and composition. There's an artist from Haiti. His name is Matthew Jean-Baptiste. He does a wonderful job bringing that kind of cultural aesthetic into the work. And then we had Macy Albright, who's a visual artist in Houston that helped really bring this mosaic work together. So collectively, there were 7 artists that worked over the course of about 6 months to actually fabricate what ended up being about 800,000 pieces of tile laid over that time period to create these mosaic monuments that now are there for the world to enjoy. Are y'all seeing these videos?
Yes.
Oh, good.
Yes, we can see the videos.
Okay, good. I'm glad that I'm not just the only one like drooling over these photos. Yes.
Now they're okay. This is Earth coming up.
Yes, this is Earth.
That's beautiful.
This is the monument honoring Richard Brock. This is at the corner of Tuam and Hutchins, which is on the northwest corner. And again, you know, we tried to make sure the color palette was very indicative of the element. And I want to thank you, Dr. Wardlaw, because when we initially approached the Earth design, you made a recommendation that we needed to incorporate more green. I don't know if you remember that conversation.
I do.
And so here we go. We tried to make sure that green, you know, obviously a strong dominant color in the Earth palette was clear and evident. And so this is the final work. I'm sorry, I said Richard Brock. This is Richard Allen. Yes.
No, that was part of the joy of the project, just everyone offering their ideas. And I have to say, you know, Bill Cochran did a yeoman's job in getting these monuments back up to speed, so that we could turn them over to you, Reginald, and to Deborah for the further fabrication. Because if you recall, they had weathered badly and there was a lot of repair that had to be undertaken before you could even begin the design process. And also Fanon worked just in, you know, selecting the typeface. There's so many things that you go through to make something, the end product, just be so absolutely beautiful. And we talked a lot about the word count, Deborah, and I think you got it right. And it just, you know, the two work together so beautifully. And anyone who passes by is going to have to stop and read about Reverend Dibble because the design is so amazing. So just the work, you know, the elements in the work complement themselves so well. So again, I know I
You know,
could go
Dr.
on, but
you know what I meant to, yeah, what I meant to say was, yeah, yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah, what I meant to say was this project was so transformational for me for two reasons. Because as a genealogist, it's a genealogist's dream to be able to find out those documents and that they were
absolutely.
available. And then I could see how the city unfolded through those documents. And then Reginald's work, I mean, it was just, it blew me away when I saw the artistry that he and his team put into it. And Reginald, don't forget, I did some dots one day as well.
Yes, yes, you did. Yes,
So I have a little
everybody did.
ownership on that project.
Yvonne laid some tile.
So,
Deborah,
I
you
mean,
laid some tile.
again,
Lucy laid some tile.
that's
Y'all
right.
all laid some tile.
That's right. That's right.
That's beautiful.
That's
and
right. That's
and
right.
the
Yeah, but it was
fact that,
very transformational. And again, as a genealogist, it's wonderful. Yeah.
well, we were blessed to have you do all of that digging and finding and just do you have a publication in the planning stage, Deborah? I don't mean to put you on the spot, but you just found so much history about our community. Are you thinking about writing?
Well, I have several. I really am with COVID-19 because I'm a genealogist and I can't do a whole lot of research because the courthouses and the archives and the libraries are closed. I have a storage shed full of information, and I thought, well, maybe this is the time to write. But if I may plug in just a little plug for my organizations, the Afro-American Historical and Genealogical Society, ODS Inc. So with all the digging that I do, our organization can teach you how to dig. We meet every second Saturday of the month virtually. So if you're interested, let me know. And that's my shameless plug for my organization.
No, that's good information that we need. And I know we need to have some questions, but Reginald, can you just talk about, we were talking earlier about the projects that you're working on right now. You just briefly mention that.
Yes, so this by far is probably one of the most historically significant projects that we worked on ever. And to know that now our work is in kind of the archives of the city of Houston is a great honor. So I just want to thank again all of the stakeholder groups that played a part in the funding, in the organizing, in the construction of the site that allowed for us to have such a perfect canvas to leave our creative imprint and legacy, building upon the legacy of those four founders. So again, thanks to everybody that's a part of that. What was the question again, Albie? I'm sorry.
Just what are you doing next? Briefly.
Oh, what am I doing now? Yeah. Oh, that's right. So we are very fortunate. We have a commission that we're currently underway. We're about 90% done with the University of Houston Graduate College of Social Work. So shout out to Dean Alan Detlef and his staff for their support. We are reimagining a 85-foot long by 8-foot high, essentially 650 square feet mosaic mural that I was commissioned to produce 20 years ago under the leadership of Dean Ira Colby. And the Graduate College of Social Work is currently under renovation, the building. And so here we are 20 years later with the opportunity to reimagine and reconstruct that mural, which we hope to have complete in the next few weeks with an installation scheduled for sometime in the spring of 2021. We just confirmed an agreement with the Dallas County Commissioner Wally Price, who's a really great advocate for social justice up in the Dallas community. And we're going to be constructing a 20-foot tall by 10-foot wide mosaic that will be in the main foyer of the South Dallas County Government Building, which is currently under construction. We just squeezed in a mural honoring the legacy, the life and the death of George Floyd and his family. So our condolences to the George Floyd family for what they've experienced. But that's at the wall of the Breakfast Club. So thanks to Marcus and Mel Davis for their support of public art in Houston. And we'll be working on a new mural for the CUNY homes at the bequest of the Houston Housing Authority, honoring the life and death of George Floyd. So that's what's keeping us busy. I'm really honored that our work is shifting from just purely painting pretty pictures and decorating walls into preserving the history and leaving a social commentary through the arts. And I'm really fortunate as an artist to be able to play that part in Houston and leave a positive impact through the arts. So that's what we're working on. And all of that can be seen and followed on reginaldadams.com. You can hit me on Instagram at Reginald Adams, and of course on Facebook at Reginald Charles Adams. But reginaldadams.com is where you can keep up with everything we have going on.
All right.
Thank
Yvonne,
you. Thank
questions?
you. Yes, thank you so much, Reginald. That was an amazing presentation. You had some awesome visuals. Thank you, Deborah. Thank you, Dr. Wardlaw. At this time, we've had a few questions come in our comment box as well as in our Q&A box. So I'm going to read a few of those, and we do want to be mindful of everyone's time, but we are going to try to take as many as we can within our time constraints. So I will start with our first question. It is from Samuel Collins. He's out of Galveston, Texas, and he asks, with the increased interest in Juneteenth and African American history, how do we leverage this opportunity to educate more individuals about our history and help artists benefit economically through appreciation of their talents by taking their work to market?
Wow, that's a wonderful question. And I know Sam Collins, hello Sam, and thank you for that. I've been thinking the same, I've had the same question on my mind over the past 3 days, because suddenly the entire country is talking about Juneteenth. You know, that the Juneteenth that we know and kind of took for granted, now everyone is curious about it because of a certain rally that's going to be held in the next couple of days. But I'd like to hear from Deborah and Reginald on this. What are you all's thoughts? How can we leverage Juneteenth for artists and other creative individuals and spread the real substantive information about what Juneteenth means while elevating the platform? Deborah? Could she hear?
Well, I think there needs to be more. Yes, I can. Yes, I just unmuted myself. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I think there needs to be more publications on Juneteenth. I know Sam Collins, he's a great friend. And as a matter of fact, we were discussing Juneteenth and some of the myths about it. And he showed me a book that's simply titled Myths About Juneteenth. And that book is a great resource for folks. And that's one of the books I'm going to order. But I think more publications. We need to have more programs at the park or where at the Gregory Library, wherever, to talk about Juneteenth, because again, it is a holiday. The younger generations probably don't know about the significance of it, but we just need to keep talking about it in whatever social media format we can, as you know, so we can get the word out.
Mm-hmm. Reginald?
Yes, so my thoughts is around the action, right? I think it's one thing to have a date on a calendar, but I think what's more important than the date on the calendar is what do you do? What is the action that's being taken from within our communities? And that doesn't stop on one day. And so I think it's really, it's great that Juneteenth now has become a national discourse. But just like February being Black History Month, I don't want our excitement about Black history to be contained to one day or to 30 days. These are things we have to do every single day. So let it be a tipping point for the action that we all have to take within our communities and within our businesses and within our own homes, where we're acknowledging what people of color have gone through, the emancipation of slavery, and now that we have these resources and these tools to evolve ourselves, what are we going to do to continue driving the messages that the four founders of Emancipation Park did when they came together to buy that land? That's what I want to see more of. I could care less about a day and care more about collective collaboration and unity amongst our people. And then that way we could celebrate every day as an opportunity to acknowledge the greatness of people of color.
I agree. And I think, you know, Al Edwards was another visionary when he fought to have this become a holiday, because the impetus for that move was really to heighten our interest in our own history. I know we've had scholars like Dr. Merlene Petrie to speak at the University Museum, and we've had students do their own research on Texas Black history, and including Juneteenth. So I agree with both of you all. We just need to do more and more and more. And there are young people out there who really want this information and are ready to do the research and ready to create the art or create the plays, the music. You know, they're extraordinary opportunities. So thank you, Sam, for that question.
Okay, our next question comes from Facebook, from Zion Escobar. And her question is, can you talk more about the sacred geometry elements?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So when I moved to Houston in the early 90s, I was first introduced to Michelle Barnes, who was actually involved with this selection panel that brought the art team together. And Michelle had the awareness to see in my desire to paint murals that I needed to meet Dr. Biggers. So I remember her coordinating a visit over to his home where Dr. Biggers was working on the last mural that he was painting, I think, which is called Nubian. And it's currently being hung in the Texas Southern University Building School. Yep, at the business school of Texas Southern University. And I had a chance to watch him paint it, and my mind was blown. I mean, if you've seen the mural, if you've seen his work, in fact, I believe that's one of his pieces behind you, Dr. Ward.
It
is
is,
that correct?
yes.
Yes. All right, so if you've seen Dr. Biggers' work, it is mind-blowing. From a technical standpoint, from a visual narrative, he's telling stories, he's reaching back to Africa, he's bringing it into the contemporary. And one of the elements that caught my eye were these really intricate geometric patterns that are basically interwoven into all of his artwork. And I asked about, you know, his introduction, and he said, you have to meet Dr. Robert Powell. And Dr. Powell was a physicist from MIT, absolute genius.
Right.
And so Dr. Biggers facilitated this introduction of Dr. Powell, and Dr. Powell, over the course of a few years, led these kind of guerrilla drawing classes where a handful of young brothers just like myself would come and spend the evenings with him. We would bring him a bottle of rum, he would drink his rum, and he would teach us about sacred geometry. And one of the things that I remember him telling me is that, Reginald, you have a responsibility to teach this and to incorporate it into your artwork. And so that was my hero's journey. I started reading about the geometry. I saw that it was a archetype that's used almost in every culture around the world. Some of the basic forms are called the seed of life, and then the flower of life, and then we have Metatron's cube and all the platonic solids, and it gets really, really deep. But it makes for a wonderful design elements that really harmonizes composition. And so without spending a whole lot more time kind of describing it, that was my introduction. And that's why you see the geometry and these kind of circular mandala patterns heavily in my work now, thanks to Dr. Biggers and Dr. Powell.
They were quite a duo. They were incredible. They really were. And if I could just add, there was one book on the Temple of Luxor that they used a great deal, because the whole Temple of Luxor is based on, the layout is based on the human body, and that whole practice of sacred geometry goes all the way back to Egypt. So that was wonderful, Reginald, that you got to study.
Oh my gosh.
With the masters.
I credit Dr. Biggers for my interest in murals on the scale that I work on now. I don't think if I would have saw his work, I would be doing what I'm doing now.
I can see that.
Thanks so much. I think this is a great time to ask this particular question from Charmaine while we are talking about the art and your inspirations behind the art. She wants to know, were any of the inspirations for the mosaics taken from Aboriginal Australian dot art? Because she feels that they're amazing and there are lots of similarities, so she's curious there.
Oh, great question. Though we didn't directly derive any of the designs from Aboriginal art, I think the Afro connection, the African connection is very much there and present. You know, Aboriginals from Australia were Africans that had just had been shifted over to Australia. And having Samson Bimbo Adenugba and Matthew Jean-Baptiste on the team, Haitians or Africans that were transported to the Caribbean. And we had a West African from Nigeria, and they very much infused the design with elements that they would see in the artwork in their home countries. And so I think that's why you see that connection between Aboriginal art and the work that we've produced. And the tile, provided that they're round glass beads, is very complementary to the dots that you see in Aboriginal art. And perhaps that's why there's such a similarity. But there was no intentional connection between Aboriginal art and what we created, though I can see the similarities now that it's referenced.
And as you said, all of the migration of Black people all over the planet, they're kind of inherent connections that we have that are expressed kind of viscerally, from your center. So that was a great question.
Okay, the next question kind of shifts gears a little bit. This question said, is there a significant African-American? There is a significant African-American community in Houston. How can we partner with the park and/or Juneteenth efforts similar to what has been done with HMAC?
Can you repeat the question? That part of it I missed.
Sure, there is a significant there is a significant African community in Houston. How can we partner with the park and/or Juneteenth efforts similar to what has been done with HMAC, that stands for Houston Museum of African American Culture?
Well, I think here, Kanetta, you and I can chime in a bit, as I do serve as the Programs and Partnership Manager for Emancipation Park Conservancy. We're always looking for ways to partner with the community and different organizations. What I will do is I will leave my email address in the comment box. So if there's anyone that's interested in getting involved with Emancipation Park Conservancy as far as partnerships or programs, you can reach out to me. And we have lots of ways that you can get involved in our Juneteenth efforts. This year in particular, I'll let Kanetta speak a little bit about our current campaign and how we are involving individuals virtually.
Sure, so definitely you guys can join us for the We Are Juneteenth campaign by sharing the graphic and taking a photo, snapping a photo of you with the graphic and saying we want to 1 to 3 words describing what Juneteenth means to you. And you can also add some text to go with it on our social media platforms at EP Conservancy, and you can join the campaign that way. And as Yvonne stated, if you're interested in partnerships, she does handle the partnerships, and we can always schedule something later on once the park reopens, or just offline, to talk about those partnerships and what that looks like. And if you have more information, as Yvonne said, she'll leave her information. If you email her, then we'll also get that information to myself about the campaign if you have any more questions.
And if I could just add to what you both just said, Iman and Kanetta, we are always looking for ways to express the African diaspora on campus at Texas Southern. I think that anything that is going on in the city based in the numerous African communities here, we would love to hear about. So vice versa, we invite you, to come to Emancipation Park as a member of the Conservancy Board. Would welcome those kinds of expressions. It's important for our young people, especially our elementary school children, to understand how complex and rich Africa is as a continent. And because we have all of these cultures right here in the city, we need to take advantage of that. But I know I love going to any African festival or performance or presentation. Restaurants, I take my students to African restaurants at the end of my class on African art. So if you could let us know, like bring flyers or whatever by the park and let us know about things that are going on in your community, I think it would be a wonderful exchange.
Thank you. Our next question is from Jeff, who was raised in Houston, but he's joining us from Denver. Thank you for joining us all the way from Denver. He says that he would love to read the plaques, and is there anywhere that they are posted online?
Good question.
So I'll chime in a bit. I'll chime in a bit here. So this is a great time for us to discuss the fact that just today we debuted our digital tour. We have been working on a geo tour and a website for Emancipation Park Conservancy. I am going to share that link in the comment box. At that link, not only will you likely be able to read the information that is on the plaques and that are on the monuments, but you'll be able to take an actual digital tour of the park, and you'll be able to see all of those architectural elements that Dr. Wardlaw spoke about a bit earlier. And also, if you visit our website at www.epconservancy.org, all of our park history and all of our founders' history is included on our website as well, Jeff. All right, so at this time, I don't see any more questions that are in our comment box. Kanetta, do we have any more that are on Facebook?
Nope, I think we have answered all of our questions on Facebook, and I'm looking in the comments chat section, and I don't see any here in Zoom either.
Okay, great. So the last thing that I will do is I do want to share a slight correction. Don from the OST Redevelopment Authority, TERS number 7, did want to bring this to our attention as we were giving some of the acknowledgements earlier. We did call it the OST Management District, but it is the OST Redevelopment Authority and TERS number 7. So we're really, really excited that you all were able to join us today. And we're really glad that we were able to share some of this information. We are extremely grateful for Dr. Wardlaw, Deborah Blacklock-Sloan, and Reginald Adams for joining us and sharing with us about the history and the creative process. We do want to bring attention to some of our other team members. The Founders Corners project definitely was not completed only by those that you are seeing on this Zoom webinar. We had a number of partners and individuals who took part in the project. Not only did we work with the OST Redevelopment District, TERS number 7, we also worked with members of the Southeast Management District, including Theola Pedway, Dawn Malone, and Gerald. I know we've mentioned Bill Cochran, we've mentioned Phenom, who worked on the project as well. Our very own Executive Director, Lucy Bremon, worked on the project as well. We had a number of board members outside of Dr. Wardlaw that worked on it. Our own Jacqueline Bostic, who is the great-granddaughter of Jack Yates. So there were a number of people that worked on this project. Michelle Bournes with the Community Artists Collective, who also was on the selection committee. And if I failed to mention you, my apologies. But you can also see all of those that worked on this project. If you go to Reginald's website, Reginald, if you could drop your website in the comment box. He has a special page that's dedicated to this project where you can literally read all about it, read all about the inspiration. You can see some of the history, and you can see all of the partners that were able to take part in the project. And last but not least, we're about ready to wrap up. Someone screen sharing? No. Last but not least, we're about ready to wrap up. If you do want to continue to support Emancipation Park Conservancy, and you do want to donate, as we are always accepting donations, and these allow us to continue to have programs like this, to continue to have projects that we work on, such as the Founders Corners. You can text to donate. You can text 1872 to 243-725. I will go ahead and add that into our comment box before we are finished. You should also know that all of the programs, all of the videos, everything that we are broadcasting and sharing right now for our We Are Juneteenth campaign is available on social media. You can find these videos on our Facebook, which is at EP Conservancy. You can find them on our Twitter and our Instagram that are the same handle. And you can find all of these videos in their full length on our YouTube channel. So if you search Emancipation Park Conservancy on YouTube, you will literally be able to access all of these videos. We'll be sure to upload this particular webinar later this week. So thanks again so much, everyone, for joining. And we hope that you choose to continue to celebrate with us this week. We've got a number of events coming up, and I will let you all go at this time. Kanetta, if you've got a quick run through of what we've got next this week, so people know when to tune in next, that would be awesome as well.
Sure. We have tomorrow, just real quick, we have our Dow recycling program that's launching at 3 p.m. And so we have a Q&A session with Dow and their team. So we definitely encourage you guys to tune into that premiere video and ask any questions you may have about the recycling program. And tomorrow night, Let's Connect Small Business and Community is a great discussion for entrepreneurs and small businesses, just to talk about how to get through this time and how different success levels and things of that nature. So we'll be doing that on Instagram Live. And then the big day on Juneteenth, on June 19th, we have an amazing celebration planned for you guys from 2 to 5. So we definitely encourage you to tune into that. You will not want to miss it. I guarantee it's going to be an amazing show. And then we're also doing a partnership with Black Restaurant Week and Chef Travis from Fleur de Delish. So we definitely encourage you to tune in to that. And we're closing out with jams and vibes from DJ Gordon Flash. So definitely tune into that as well. That's it.
Sounds great.
Awesome. Thanks, Kanetta. And we will let everyone get back to the rest of their evening. Again, thank you so much for joining. And we will hopefully see you all for some of our events later on in the week, virtually.
Thank you all.
Thank
you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.